105. Welding rail ends. Personal protective equipment. Purpose of the welding ends. Alloy rail precaution. Use the proper stick with the weld electrodes. Prepare welding. Determining welding length. Remove the defective material. Preheat. Maintain inner pass temperature. Apply weld post heat treatment. Temporary rail end build butts. Temporary rail end build up. Stilot rail ends and surface the grinding oil. Or your brace with grinding, hard hat, hard hearing protection, type of the eye with the welding hood with a clear lens, grinding mode with the shape of the goggle with the wrap around face shield with the goggle with the shape of the glass with the number 5 shape with the welding jacket, the welding sleeve with leather leggings, approved safety tube, safety toe boot, flame resistant clothing, safety resistant policy, restrictive respiratory equipment, housing fuel, gas, hard hat, large protection, dual eye protection, wrap around face shield with the goggles and safety shield, monoglass shade 5, safety glass can be used alternative, leather welding gloves, welding jacket, weld sleeve, leather leggings, approved safety boots, and flammable resistant clothing. See respiratory policy, respirator requirement, electrical arc welding, welding hood properly shaved with a hard hat, but unless approved with a non-hard PA PAPR weld hood, hearing protection, safety glasses, leather, welding glove, the welding jacket, welding sleeve with approved safety tool, both flame-resistant clothing, see respiratory equipment. Purpose of welding end. The purpose of the welding rail ends with the correct rail end batter, remain chipped rail, with repair chipped rail with the good connect section of the rail next to the worn section of rail. Do not weld rail ends. Correct drop ends with the strip of the bent rail with the commutator with the worn joint board, loose bolt with the four track surface. Repair engine burns, wheel burns, crush heads. Defect must be replaced within at least 15 feet of the rail. Do not weld gauge face of the rail, alloy rail precaution, preheating, post-treating procedure for the different alloy, non-alloy, chromium, vanadium, and acrylium malleable rails are extremely sensitive to the rapid cooling. Additional care must be used with working with the alloy rail include uninstalling alloy rail with a replacement rail with no overheating, bluing, and the alloy rail with the drilling and cutting, using sharp drill bits with the proper side of the lubricating with the drilling bolt holes, not performing arc welding an alloy rail with an ambient temperature below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Use the proper sticker wiring electrodes. Gentlemen, approve of the stick with the wired electrodes from welding, and then show the item number that approve the electrode welding parameters. Prior to welding rail ends, prepare the joint and fellowship of the joint and tamp the tie with each side of the rail joint with install the tire bolts of the necessary and plate for the joint boards with the necessary display with the polyprotect similar insulated joints install with the standard joint bars prior to welding, reinstall insulation after welding cools. Determine weld length. If the bolts rails are same plane with the rail is battered and chipped, the following instructions: build the rail level, serve the maintenance of the existing rail beyond the batter of the chip. Do not end with the weld directly over the bolt hole. Do not weld beyond the outermost bolt hole. Check with a true rail end batter straight edge independently on each rail, but if the rail is damaged beyond the outermost bolt hole of the rail must be replaced. So it shows the straight edge chipped and battered rail end. One rail is lower end of the plane with the budding rail. Place the straight and the high rail with extend with the end of the straight edge above the low rail. Measure the distance between the straight edge and low rail. Determine the length of the weld low rail. Dividing measurement and stamp thousandth of an inch from step 2 with a 12 thousandths of an inch, and then show the straight edge gauge. Remove the defective material. Use the grinder to remove the all fatigue spalling. Otherwise, defective materials do not use carbon arc cutting, oxyfuel cutting for this purpose. Preheat, maintain inner pass temperature. Use teleweld or other approved the rail heater with the recommend with the preheat post-treat with a temp stick with a pyrometer with the measure of the rail temperature during preheating. When the pyrometer measure must be taken in the same spot with the distance. Use time no farther than 8 inches away. Preheat the entire welded air 3 inches beyond with the welded air required temperature. Preheat non-alloy rail 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Preheat alloy rail to 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. Maintain the inner pass throughout with the welding operation. Welding being 3/4 inch to 1 inch wide. And training operational currents that interrupt the welding operation. Rail must be reheated in the preheat temperatures before welding continues. Applying the weld. Apply the ground clamp at the rail anchor. Do not apply with the loud with the ground clamp to make contact with any of the part of the rail. The joint bar with the may leave the electrical arc or result in fracture. Make the weld beads 3/4 inch to 1 inch wide. Weld bead length may be as long as the repair area. If necessary, overlap weld beads 30 to 40%. Remove the slag with a chipping hammer. Applying with each of the welded bead. Beating each weld bead 2 to 3 times per inch with a 2-pound ball peen hammer. Apply longest welded bead with the gauge side of the rail. Do not use carbon black with the hybrid carbon steel with a carbon ridge edge jig if available. This will help maintain shoulder on edge of the rail edge and show the rail end and the gauge side of the longest bead and post heat. Use temp stick pyrometer to measure the rail temperature of the post heating. Use the pyrometer measurement must be taken on the same spot with the distance each time no further than 8 inches away. Post heat 1 inch at the end of the rail, 3 inches beyond the welded air required temperature. Post heat non-alloy rail with 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. Post heat alloy rail with 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. Temporary rail end buildup. Temporary rail end buildup is used to prevent batter with the highest rail mismatch and to comply with the FRA tread mismatch requirement during curve rail and switch component replacement. See Figure 105D. Rail preparation. Temperature rail end up must comply with the standard rail welding procedures, including grinding permanent metal, preheating, post-heating, same with the permanent welds. Failure to properly heat rail ends with the result of the formation of brittle mortise and thermal cracking. Temporary buildup rail ends are not intended to permanent and should be removed at this first opportunity. Slot rail end. The RPM rating of the abrasive wheel must not exceed the RPM rating of the power equipment that be used. The slotting wheel must not be more than 1/8 of an inch thick. The slot should be match the corner of the rail end. Avoid cutting over the necking of the joint bars. Open joint square of the rail end. Remove the ending of the flow from grinding. Slot rail ends of the required dimension. Slot of the rail ends 1/4 inch 5/16 of an inch deep. The bevel of the rail ends 1/16 of an inch 3/32 of an inch deep. Close the joint center slotting wheel between the rail ends. Closing joint to remove the equal amount of the metal from each rail. The slot rail ends 1/4 inch 5/16 of an inch deep and the slot width of 3/16 of an inch. And show for the closed joint. Insulated joints. Remove only flowed metal with the rail ends. Do not with the sharp edge of the rail end with the slotting. Avoid cutting of the end post as much as possible. Do not slot any deeper than necessary. Remove the flowed metal. Alright, so for the grinding rail ends. Grind gauge of the field rail with the rail ends of the mesh match existing profile. Remove the overflow grind. Surface of the rail ends. Level the tolerance over the 0,000 of an inch to as high as 10,000 of an inch. If one rail is lower than the other, after welding, grind a uniform tabs over the end of the high rail at the end of the weld to prepare low rail. If the bond wires are damaged, notify signal maintainer single operator hotline. Remove the rail bonds and grind only. 106 welding switch points.